Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell, Morning Kombat. Okay, BC, Paddy Pimblett revealed of his own volition that for UFC London, he made $12K to show, $12K to win. Are you surprised? What is your takeaway from that?
I'm not surprised, mother effers, but it shouldn't be that way. Obviously, he's 27 years old. This was his second UFC fight. I understand the metrics of contracts and how they're based on experience in a lot of ways. Molly McCann, the meatball on the same card, made 40 to show, 40 to win, plus the $50K bonus. But
right, Paddy got a bit bonus as well. So all in all, about $75K.
Could you argue that along with Tom Aspinall's upper bound limits as a legitimate heavyweight title contender, that card, UFC London, became the biggest selling fight night in the company's history and a boon at the box office? 70% because of Paddy Pimblett coming on.
They did a $4.5, almost $5 million gate. Ask yourself if Paddy's not on that card, or rather, do they hit those milestones? I should say, as easily, as quickly, as far as they did without Paddy Pimblett. I don't believe that. I think he brought a significant amount of interest to this card, and the whole point is, shouldn't you be compensated equivalently?
Yeah, it's an embarrassment. That was a quasi pay-per-view. Do you have to earn it? Yes, and this is only Paddy's second UFC fight, as I mentioned, but he's a next-level earning potential type of guy. He's the guy that you might potentially slow play in his matchmaking, as we talk about, for a reason, because of that large potential. That's very insulting. When we get past that as an acceptable default minimum, I mean, are you when you see, for example, Dan Hardy's on the Ariel show today and says, hey, look at UFC 95, which is what year? 2008, 9?
Something like that. Mm-hmm.
I made 5,000 to show and 5,000 to win.
I believe that.
I believe it. It's ridiculous. That's also potentially 15 years ago. Where we are today with what the UFC is doing each year financially. 12 and 12 for a guy who essentially was the co-main event. I mean, you can argue him as up as high as that's the people's main event, as Earl would say, that people came there. But even if they didn't come there just for Paddy, he's essentially the co-main event theme on that card, even though his fight wasn't second to last. What's the minimum at this point, even if it's your second UFC fight, that he would deserve for that? 100,000?
I don't know. And this is the other point that it raises. It's like, dude, I don't know what all the right answers. Imagine there was an MMA or UFC fighters union. Yeah. I don't know what all the right answers are. But when you go through how the UFC generates revenue and you see the ways the fighters are cut in certain circumstances, some of this new NFT stuff, and there's a lot more than that, of course. But in ways that they're not cut in on the gate. They're cut in on the pay-per-view, but obviously on the UFC's terms. They're not cut in on a whole number of things where it's like, if they just relieve the pressure on sponsors, right? I know Paddy's got the Barstool one, but I'm saying if there was a little bit less pressure on them in terms of they had a little more freedom to do and work for sponsorships or get a cut of the gate, I'm not saying that would solve the fighter pay problems, but it wouldn't be this like really a highly examined issue that the UFC runs into. There are so many obstacles to getting them paid by virtue of the UFC having control of all of the mechanisms. Yes. That seems like it's not a sustainable situation.
It's not. And as I've said it before, and I think it's true, UFC has created a pay structure that has the haves and have-nots. And the reason why they're able to get away with this for so long is because once somebody crosses over from being a have-not to being a have, boy, do they not want to rock the damn boat at all. And that essentially eliminates the middle class and says there's this 1% you can get to celebrity fighter status, legitimate title contender, champion, where I'll make money, and anything short of that I probably won't. The problem is for UFC, they're doing little things to fix the fighter pay issue, but I feel like it's more of let's keep the haves even happier than they were before and still leave the structure in which there's no middle class and everybody is fighting, crawling, scratching, giving of their body and mind at will to try to get to that one chance to win that fight that can put them in position to win the fight, to become the have. It's a brilliant strategy. But the fact that through all this talk about fighter pay, somebody could be in Paddy's spot and pull home that little when in boxing, what's the equivalent? If it's a triple header on Showtime and you're in the opening bout and you're there because there's a lot of attention on you, you could be making $500,000. You could be making $600,000. I mean, you're probably making $150,000
you're making
to
six
$400,000.
figures.
I mean, you're making a lot of money is the point, and we're making 2008 terms here for Paddy Pimblett. That's got to change.
Just last thing I'll say on this is, you had Lawrence Epstein, who I believe is I think he's the chief operating officer of the UFC, although that may not be right at this point. I'm not sure what his title is, but he's been with them a long time. He's a very smart guy. The guy went to Harvard, right? But he told the Sports Business Journal, it's like, well, why are people examining fighter pay? Because of Jake Paul trolling. There's like this workers movement to get more rights and more money. And, fighters use it for leverage, right? To say, oh, I'm not underpaid and I want a new contract. It's like, right, I'm sure all of those things exacerbate the situation. But when you got a guy like Paddy Pimblett at $12K, the reason why people are upset about fighter pay is not because of Jake Paul trolling. It's because fighter pay is low. That's the reason. I know everyone gets on Twitter and like, well, they signed the deal. Ask yourself why, and this is from John Nash, ask yourself why someone in Paddy's position would sign a deal like that, knowing that it would be in many ways either disadvantageous or, at bare minimum, there wouldn't be the same amount of equity on either side. It's because that's the nature of the industry. You have very little options to go around that and get paid. The point is to try and put positions or fighters in positions where they can get a little bit more in terms of what they earn.
I'll tell you what, good on Paddy.
And what they generate.
He revealed this in an interview on Barstool, and I know Barstool showed a lot of love to him and Molly McCann and sort of endorsed them and embraced them and kind of brought them on as teammates in some degree. But I'm glad he used his public opportunity to bring that forward, because it's for some people
it's transparency and it's information.
And some people say, hey, shows like you, MK, hey, great that you're talking about it, but do we have to talk about it every week? Yeah. So when it's this despairing,
I wish there was an MMA union and they could handle this, and we would never have to talk about this again. But that's just not the world we live in.
I mean, those broadcasters probably made a lot more on that night than those fighters did.
Although I would take a $12K check.
I mean,
if you have a $12K check to write me, I would
whatever
take
they're
that.
paying Mr. John Anik, I'll happily accept that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas, Morning Combat. We'll see you all next time.